Alright, our next one that we're going to be doing is salinity, and this measures the amount of salt in water or even soil. So I'll go through the use first. So in order to use this, make sure there are batteries in here. So if it turns on and off, it'll go through the self-cal. Keep the cap on for that, and then you should be able to see this. If there is low battery, it may flash at you. So I'm just going to shut it off for now, just so that we can take a look at the batteries. You do that by unscrewing the cap on the top, making sure this is out of the way here. And you'll notice that you have a little storage compartment like so, where you can take the batteries out, and in this stack over here. There's a very specific way to put them in. This metal part has to go down, and it will only go in one way. Only allow you to put it in one way, but basically this metal part here matches with that metal part. That makes things a little bit easier to kind of line up and put in, and just make sure it's somewhat flush there, and then you put the cap on. Make sure the cap isn't tilted. You might cross thread it. I like to back it up the other way, and you can hear the click, and then it'll go on fairly easily. There's a little bit of a seal here, so making sure that it's squeezed, not too tight, but tight enough to make that seal so that no water gets in. So in order to sample, you press the on-off button. Make sure it goes through the self-cal with the cap on, not in the water. Make sure that the salinity has the ppm and the S on it. If it does not, press the mode button to switch between the different ones. That is not what you want. Neither is that one. Make sure it's ppm with the S. It says SAL salinity on the bottom, and it's reading 0, which makes sense. There shouldn't be any salt with no liquid around. You can decide to sample directly into a container of some sort, or you can use the supplied container over here, in which case you'll fill to 20 milliliters. So let's try this out first, and in order to read it, this must be immersed, and you'll want to swirl the probe inside here, and it will tell you what the salinity is of the water, and we have 270 for the water here, which makes sense. The water inside the centers here are chlorinated as per protocol. So 270 ppm, parts per million. So you can just tap that. Make sure that you'll notice that there are very sensitive black carbon electrodes over here, and make sure that those are free of debris. You'll want to rinse things off, if you like, in distilled or deionized water. What you can also do is use this to sample, or put soil in as well, in which case you'll want to fill up to the 20 milliliter mark. Almost there, a little bit more. Yeah, that's close enough. And you can put the probe in. There we go. And then you can swirl it like this. So I'm swirling it like so, and you can read the amount over here. We're at 300 over here. So you can pour it out. If you do want to test for soil, what you can do is fill to the 4 milliliter mark of soil, and then fill the rest with deionized water. The reason why you fill with the DI water is because, as you can tell, the tap water here has chlorine in. It will affect your results. Some very healthy ponds and streams that I have measured have salt levels way below what the tap water is. I usually get around 60 to 80 for some very healthy streams. You may get a little bit more depending where you are. But using this will affect your results if you just use regular old tap water. So if you are going to sample for soil, make sure you have a jug of deionized or distilled water. So you would normally fill the soil up to here, and then put the rest with water, stir it, or shake it up with the cap, and then you can then test this out. After you test it out, there may be some bits of soil in here, so you'll want to rinse it out. Don't force it in if there's a lot of soil in, and that's not good for the probe and may bend those little electrodes at the end. Alright, after you are finished, you can just cap it to protect those electrodes and make sure the unit is off. For storage, what you'll want to do is make sure that this is dry. And this is the same for long-term storage as well. You will want to make sure this is completely dry, because if that water stays on there, it may lead to mold or algae growing on here, which is not a good thing. So in order to dry it, what I'll usually do is air dry it. So just put it on a towel or paper towel and leave it overnight exposed like that. As long as it's not hitting anything or the probes aren't hitting anything, it'll dry off. And once it's completely dry, including the cap here, you can then put it on there. If you need to dry it quicker and you don't have the option of overnight, I will be very, very gentle and just try, oops, let me see if I can get this in focus, just try absorbing some of the water in here. You can see it's absorbing through capillary action some of that water. I'm not forcing or scrubbing anything. I'm just gently dabbing some of the water out of there. That's if you want to dry it very quickly. Now if you are using this the next day, I won't typically dry it because it's not enough time for mold or anything to happen. So if I'm using it the next day, I'll just cap it, even if it's mildly wet, and that's it. If there is, if I was using it for soil, I would definitely rinse these off very quickly, and then if I'm using them the next day, I'd cap it. If I'm not, after rinsing them out, I'll just let them dry, air dry overnight. For calibration, what you'll need is this sample thing. Make sure it's completely dry. I'm going to actually use a completely dry one in order to calibrate, because adding water to the calibration solution, even in a few drops, will affect the reading. You'll want to use the supplied calibration standard and fill to 20 mil. I will do that right now to show you. So you'll fill this to 20 mil. There we go, it's filled. I'm going to put that down for now and make sure the cap's on so it doesn't spill. And this is somewhat dry. You saw me patting it dry earlier, so that's good. Again, you don't want any water on here either, because that will affect the results. You want to turn it on as usual, self-cal. Again, not immersed in water. Alright, it's at 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now put this inside and swirl. And look at that, 3030. It should be at 3000 as it says on the calibration standard, 3000. So it's very close. Oh wait, look at that. It's right at 3000. It's because I calibrated all these. But let's say it wasn't. Oh, let's say, oh, there we go, 3010 here. Okay, so I'm going to press the cal button and hold it for 2 seconds. 1000, 1000. And then it'll flash 3000 for calibration. It'll save, and there we go. Oh, look, it went down to 299. So, all right, so that's good enough. Even if it's 10, 20 off, maybe it's okay. It's close enough. And what you'll want to do is rinse the probe after. Just rinse it off. Just take out all of that salt solution. And I mean, it's still reading things. 300 back to 300 makes sense. And I'm going to shut that off. And again, I'm going to let it air dry with the cap here. I will usually rinse off the cap too if it was stored dirty. With the salt calibration standard, I'm going to put it back in here because it was not very contaminated and works alright. Unless there's like a lot of contamination, I wouldn't worry about not using it again. So I'm going to put that in here. I forgot to mention, and I did this already, but before you use this, make sure you shake it, because sometimes the salt will be on the very bottom. So making sure that you shake the salt calibration standard before you use it. I did shake it prior, but forgot to mention it on video here. So make sure this is solid over there, and you should be good to go. Make sure the probe is turned off, or else it will drain battery. For long-term storage, again, making sure that this is completely dry, the cap is completely dry. The only additional thing for long-term storage I would do is take out the battery, because the battery may, especially if it's in there for a long time, may corrode. But making sure that this whole thing is out for long-term storage is always a great thing. Again, once this is completely dry, I would cap it like this. That way, this is now ready for long-term storage. The battery I would put in a Ziploc bag, maybe with some other batteries, so that if it does corrode, it won't corrode anything else, because the battery is easy to replace. This probe is not so easy.